Hello, this is Sergio with the RideShare Guy. Today I'm joined by Stephanie Vigil. I think I got her name right.
Good job.
She's a freshman representative from Colorado, and her story is something to be told, to be honest with you, because she's coming up with, as her first line of work, some legislation for gig worker rights. And the most important thing in this subject is she was a DoorDash driver, so she knows exactly what these companies are doing. And what better way than to hear from her what the bill that she's introducing, which is 2398. So Stephanie, with that said, welcome. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Sergio. It's so nice to be on the show. And I've done a few shows like this, a few of these excuse me, a few of these podcast episodes with fellow drivers. And it's just always so fascinating to me how many of us, once we connect with each other, we all know we're facing the same nonsense on these apps, right? They make really big promises, and I think they're really good promises, right? You kind of like work on your own terms. Consumers are getting all these extra choices. Like it should be a really great opportunity for people to, make a good way for themselves in the world, make your own money, do your own thing. Excuse me, I don't know what hit my throat as soon as I got on here.
It's all good.
But then, the bait and switch that has occurred, though, that of course we're so familiar with, is that in order for you to reasonably make decisions about your own work, you have to have all the relevant information. And I think the big companies, they know as well as we do what counts as relevant information and necessary info to have. And so they can play a lot of games with what they show you, what they don't show you, when they show it to you, how the user interface is designed to get you to act a certain way. So when I first started doing third-party delivery, I just did DoorDash. I've kind of become a multi-apper over the years. And at first, I was one of those people. I was like, "Oh, there's like this Top Dasher program. That must be good, right? Like you prove yourself. It's like a loyalty system. You prove that you're good for doing a lot of offers, and they'll give you some perks for it." And after a while, it's kind of like I asked around. I talked to other drivers. I checked like some message boards and groups, and I was like, "No, no, 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 you're just teaching them that you'll say yes to anything.
Yeah.
That's what you're teaching them, that you'll say yes to anything. And also, you're committing to saying yes to almost everything because you can't get the Top Dasher unless you keep that 90% up. So, guess who's going to get all the crap orders? The person who can't say no,
Yeah.
right? Which is honestly just kind of like classic like labor theory, right? So, if you don't have the bargaining power in a situation where you're employed in any capacity, then you're not getting the best deal. You need some bargaining power.
Right. I mean, having been involved in the gig economy for 7 years myself, we call it the gamification and the gamblification of all these apps, right? They all start wonderful, they promise the world, and then look where we are now. So as I know as a driver myself, the trend has not been the driver's friend in any of this, right? And we do all our own surveys on the rideshare guy constantly, every 6 months to a year. And there's two things that drivers complain about it, regardless of being rideshare or delivery, last mile delivery, is earnings and safety, right? And lately, it's been obviously there has been a movement. Few articles showed up in LA Times and some other mainstream media as far as unjust deactivations, which is drivers email me all the time, right? So let's talk a little bit about that part of your bill 2398. So I know you introduced that with Robert Rodriguez and Jennifer Bacon, right? And they're the sponsors. So obviously you've experienced this, right? You got your hands dirty. You exactly know what you're doing here, right? So tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about the details of 2398 and where it
yeah,
is at the moment.
yeah, sure. So, Senate Bill 2398. We'll back up a little bit here. So, the stuff that made it into the bill, the policy that made it into the bill, was initially formulated by Colorado Independent Drivers United. So I'm part of a non-traditional drivers union. I just say, non-traditional. We don't share a workspace.
Right.
We can't have a collective bargaining unit, right? Like the concept is there. We're going to organize. We're working together on some things, but it's not like a typical like shop floor based
Yeah.
union. Um, but we actually, before I was elected and when I was still just working on trying to get to the seat, we had met with a couple of, current sitting members and been like, we feel like we need to run some legislation for this, right? Like we need to get some things codified in law. They make some promises that they're going to do this, they're going to do that, that you're going to work for yourself, that you have all of this choice, but then they manipulate you. So like they need transparency rules, and people need protection against arbitrary deactivations and unjust deactivations. So we had put together a bunch of that, and then like the bill was actually already in drafting and in process before I even came to the House. And of course, like the first opportunity I had to be like, I would like to be a sponsor for that in the House side, please. This is part of my struggle. I jumped right on that. So the two big things that we're working on with that, again, the transparency piece is the big one. Okay. So we've created some definitions we're creating some definitions in statute in Colorado about what constitutes, a transportation network company and a delivery network company. What do we consider to be a take rate or a take amount? What's considered to be a tip, and who, right? Like when do you have to show this information? What does it take to be in compliance with this law? And just a lot of it is definitions, because we just don't have a clear picture for this in law, right? We're all operating off of this like ages old independent contractor model that was designed for like freelancers and, somebody like designing a website or remodeling a bathroom, and like the technology is way ahead of what this was initially designed for. And then we're also working on the arbitrary deactivation piece. And that one's a little bit trickier because we want to, we're getting like the Public Utilities Commission, who currently handles all the TNC stuff because that's the law put it under their purview, and the Department of Labor Standards and Statistics to come together and make some rules about, when is it justified? What do they need to tell you about, what would get you deactivated, and what your review process is. And then for the Department of Labor to handle that, because it is effectively a labor issue. And we've done some amendments already on the Senate side, because the bill is starting in the Senate Bill 98, just to make sure that if somebody has been like credibly accused of assault, for instance, and they're under law enforcement investigation, that we're not creating an avenue for them to get put right back on the road. We're talking about for people who like got a bad review, need a chance to explain themselves. Or
so 2398 is for rideshare as well as last mile delivery, correct?
Yeah, so it's delivery and rideshare.
Right. So when you say TNC, Transport Network Company, and DNC, Delivery Network Company, right? Yep.
So we're talking about.
Right. So where is the bill now? I mean, I know a lot of these bills. Look, I never pull punches on Show Me the Money Club, right? Our weekly live stream, and that's why people gravitate towards it. That I go like, I call it the way I see it, and I am pretty sure you're getting bombarded with the Flex Group, right? The lobbyists for Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, and Grubhub, and Instacart, and all these companies, right? So I mean, look, I know the way they play the game. I lived through it with AB5 and Prop 22 in California. I'm in California, right? I mean, I've been through all of it. So how's that part going? I mean, are there really efforts to actually thwart this bill or stop it or amend it, or what's going on?
Well, obviously they don't like it, right? Which is, that's duh, right? Of course they don't. We're pretty good in the Colorado legislature about giving some airtime to people who hate our legislation, so we can see what what don't you like about it? What would it take to get you from like an opposed position to a neutral position, or even from like an amend to a neutral? And if it's something we can live with, or that maybe even makes the bill easier to implement so that it ages better, so that other companies that enter into this space will also be compliant, right? Like we want to have all those conversations. And we have, and we will have more. Some of them are a little bit tense, and some are quite friendly. And amicable, because for the most part we're talking about lobbyists. I'm not meeting with not actually sitting down with Tony Hsu and asking him why it is he's a billionaire and I get paid $2 for an offer. We don't get to have that conversation, but I get to talk with some lobbyists. So
so when it comes to the transparency part of the bill, right? That's just because it seems like there's two important parts of this bill, which is one is transparency, full transparency. Now we're not talking their way of transparency, full transparency, as far as, and one of the other complaints obviously the drivers have is these companies' take rates, right? We know what has happened to their take rates over the last 10 years. I mean, their way of making money is diametrically opposed to a driver's way of making money. I mean, this is not rocket science. It's a two-sided marketplace. They have to charge as much as they can, and they have to pay as little as they can. As simple as that, right? So, but in there, they're not transparent enough.
Right. Like all of the overhead is still on the driver. Like the vast majority of the overhead is still on the driver, right? So like the transparency piece for what we're going for, we're not looking at like setting, like a set take rate that they can't go over or anything like that. We just want it to be clear for the customer and clear for the driver. Here's how much they were charged. Here's how much the driver is actually getting. Because I think people get this idea in their head that like, well, I paid like $50 for a ride from the airport. Like, don't tell me these drivers are starving. I don't believe it, because they don't know where their money is going, and don't recognize, because how would they, that you still have to pay for the vehicle, the gas, the insurance, your data and your device and everything. That's all on you, right? So just having that information available, I think, is going to start to shift the gears a lot here. Because it's not fair to the consumer either for them to get gouged, and it's not even to anyone's benefit, right? It's not to the benefit of the person who's actually serving them, which is the part that people generally will like understand, right? Like if I'm paying more because you're out late on a holiday night, totally. If I'm paying more because Uber has discovered this is a good way to double their profits in one weekend when they're not providing the service, that's different. So I think that getting people the information is the big one, right?
Because I think on this part you hit the nail on the head as far as, look, they have been hiding basically, getting rid of the driver receipts, because in the old days, up until maybe 6 months ago, actually on Uber, that I used to be able to see the passenger receipt immediately after I ended a trip. Now you have to go to their website. They're hidden behind a whole bunch of different clicks you have to go through. So, but I think where you're really coming through for me, as far as my support, is that, you are 100% correct. The passenger thinks we're swimming in cash because they just got charged $50, and they cannot understand or fathom probably that Uber took maybe 30 out of that 50, right?
Yeah.
And to them, it's shocking, because that's what I do. I still drive, and every time I do it, I ask the passenger, like, what are you paying for this? And I show them what I'm getting paid. They're in shock. Right. So once the passenger gets on the driver's side, right, meaning that, oh, wait a minute, these guys are not making any money, right? I think that's where you're going to just change the ball game here. So passenger knowing where their money is going is so important, so important.
Absolutely. No, consumers and drivers alike, we're on the same team here, right? It's big tech and the ways that they have of concealing relevant information, using our data the way they want to use it instead of what's good for us. Like, that's kind of the big struggle here. So, so the bill right now, because you asked tonight, and I'm going to see if I can give this a somewhat concise answer. The lawmaking process is so like nonlinear, right? Yep. So, its House of Origin is the Senate, so it hasn't even come to my chamber yet. It's been through its first committee of reference. The committee of reference is, like it went to business, labor, and tech, for instance. Go figure. It passed there. We got one amendment on there, and now it needs to go through appropriations, because the way it's currently written, it requires an appropriation. It shouldn't by the time we're finished with it, but that's where it's parked, right? Because this week is budget week at the Colorado State Capitol. So we do the long bill. That's basically just the big appropriations bill for all of our funding for the next fiscal year. And until that's done, there's a whole lot of things that cannot move through appropriations because we haven't solidified the budget yet. So once it gets through that, it'll get through appropriations. It'll go back to the Senate floor proper for a second and then a third and final hearing, or for third and final passage. And then it'll cross the hall, and then it'll get introduced in the House, and then I'll get to take it to committee on the House side. So it's got a few steps ahead of it. The last month or so of the legislative session is madness for this very reason, right? A lot of things just can't get done until the last month. And then it's go time, because we have 120-day session for the legislature, and then it's done. Right. So it's kind of,
when it comes to the appropriations, obviously, is this like, their number one complaint has always been, when I say theirs is TNCs and DNCs, is that, oh, the fares are going to go up, prices are going to go up, we're going to lose customers, and you're going to lose customers because demand is going to go down. I'm not buying any of that. Are you buying any of that?
I don't buy any of that. If that is the logic, I would dearly like to know what's causing the prices to surge right now.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. I mean, They always complain about that. That's, the scare tactics that they did with Prop 22 as well. They're like, oh, well, you may lose your flexibility, you may lose your freedom, we may have to do this. Demand is going to go down. Honestly, demand has not gone down whatsoever. And the price increases they have instituted is because they want to be profitable now, not because they're paying the driver anymore.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And honestly, with our bill, part of the reason we just decided not to fuss with it at all, the classification issue to us was like, it's just kind of a non-starter.
Yeah.
We have some drivers who would like to just be considered employed and be done with it and get paid that way and handle their work that way. And then people who are really, really committed to the independent contractor model and they don't want to give it up. And I can't say for sure which one is the right one. I just know that the consensus among drivers is, the model that we're on is the model that we're on. It just should be what they say it is, and it isn't. And they need to be held accountable for saying that you get to pick your own jobs when you don't, if they're manipulating you,
Yeah.
Some of these, some of the things that I've seen from the companies for legislation like this around the country, because, there's like a bill in Minnesota too, and like New York's doing stuff, Chicago's doing stuff, is that they're kind of like, well, but, at the end of the day, we really do need somebody to take every order. It's like, yeah, you do.
Of course you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
So
of course you do. Because look, that's their job, right? But that doesn't mean that, everything has to go their way, number one. But let's talk a couple of minutes about the deactivation process, unjust deactivation process, right? We know it as well as you do that if you're a rideshare driver, right? Both these companies, well, all the TNCs basically, they shoot first, ask questions later. Basically, they take the passenger side at all costs, and then the driver is struggling out there, unless they have a dash cam footage or whatever not. But sometimes they're not even accepting that. So what is in your, the part of the bill that's in regards to unjust deactivations?
Yeah, so we're going to have some rules set, first of all, that there needs to be some clear expectations. It can't just be like, oh, if somebody complains about you, we turn it off.
Yep.
And then you sort it out later. Drivers need to have some clear expectations about what constitutes a serious offense before they can just deactivate you for it. And then you will have a right to a review. And some of these are things that we can't write it directly into the bill because the Department of Labor needs to decide some rules and some forms about how that all works. But you will have a right to a review. They can restrict for, what's the window temp? Like pulling up my notes on the pre-amendment bills to kind of take a look at it. They can do like up to 72 hours to do a review, right? Like they can pause you for 72 hours or materially restrict your access for up to 72 hours while they conduct a review, like, what happened, like somebody says you assaulted them or whatever it was. And if they do not have evidence to move forward with anything, they can't just ban you from the app indefinitely. But anything that, and this was something we worked with victims rights groups on, just so that we were clear about like protecting victims of true offenses.
Yes.
That if somebody is under law enforcement investigation, there is no getting reactivated until that's right. That needs to be settled. So, you got to pick a line somewhere, but we definitely have to put a stop to this whole, like, you just get shut off and you're out of luck. It hasn't happened to me, but I also, we have seen a pattern, and this is anecdotal, to be fair. So I just want to put that out there. We don't have piles and piles of data confirming this, but there does seem to be a pattern with what sorts of names end up on the deactivation list, right? Like there does seem to be a pattern where like folks with like non-Anglo sounding names, men with names that are generally considered, that are historically considered Black names, culturally Black names, just more likely to get deactivated. And that's concerning. Because even if it is, and it probably would be, it's implicit bias if that's what's occurring. Certainly, I don't think anybody's out there being just like, yeah, I'm such a racist, I'm just going to make this phone call.
Yeah.
Fired. People aren't like that. But we have to look at ways that like bias interacts with technology, and see that there is a clear pattern there that disenfranchises people in certain demographics, and take that very seriously. That we need to find a way to like make it truly neutral and fair for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, well, when you said review, by the way, is there going to be, let's say, is that review done by the companies themselves, or is it done by a third party arbitrator, or let's say, a retired judge, or is there a panel you go in front of? Because to me, the most important thing is, see, when they deactivate you now, they do accept your review, but 99 out of 100 times, they're going to come back and say, you're gone, right? We did the review, we're done. Well, internal reviews are meaningless to me as far as these companies are concerned, right? Because if I can go in front of a panel, put my case on, and then they have to show up, obviously, with their evidence, because 9 out of 10 times or 99 out of 100, the company will not tell you who the passenger was because of supposed privacy, right? They will not tell you which trip you messed up on, if you did at all, right? I mean, they will not give you any information, right? So how do you protect yourself against that, right? I think, is it a third party review, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so no, so we will be bringing in the Department of Labor Standards and Statistics.
Okay.
So that you have actual, we elect governments for a reason, right? To look out for us,
Yeah.
not to just help companies be more profitable at our expense. So they've asked on a number of occasions, like, we'd really like to handle this internally. I'm sure you would, but no, we're not going to do that. We're not
Yeah.
going to do that. Washington State tried something where they did a fee for service to pay for it because it's got to pay for itself. And they set up like a completely different agency that just does this. That's put together by it was like part government, part company, part drivers, and whatever. And it doesn't look like it's working super well. So we weren't like looking to mimic that model necessarily, but it could be something they find a workable solution for. I just think, we have a Department of Labor for a reason. It's supposed to look out for working folks, and resolve disputes between workers and companies, regardless of what their technical relationship is, right? Whether or not you're contracted or hired, you're still performing service for pay for another company's benefit, and they owe you some justice. You deserve a process if you've been deactivated from their application.
Yeah, I mean, these two are great. One other thing and that I would have loved to see in this part of the bill is that, look, these companies every 2 years they come up with their own safety reports, right? And I fully understand there are bad apples in the driver community, without a question. Okay. And those should be deactivated, those should be gone, right? And then, but when we look at those numbers, the assaults or sexual assaults or harassment actually is a 50-50 process, truly. So, this is from their own reports. 50% of the time the driver is guilty of some sort of horrific action. And then on the other side, 50%, the passenger is guilty, right? So protecting the driver when it comes to this is important, but more importantly, Stephanie, as you know, we read every single day that this driver got carjacked, this driver got killed, this delivery driver, this happened. I am just begging to all legislatures that I'm going to talk to, starting with you, is that these companies have to be held somehow accountable to a certain degree. When one of their passengers gets in the car and carjacks me, I have basically no rights, really. They just let you go. And safety is a very important issue. Why are these companies so adamantly opposed to passenger onboarding process that could be more scrutinized, such as upload an ID as a passenger, valid government ID? We don't want a background check, but how about this? Like small, simple things that could give a little bit more, comfort when it comes to safety to drivers. Like, I don't know why they're not doing it.
Yeah, no, it does really seem like they've got a lot more fear and trepidation about the driver doing something than they do the customer. And the fact of the matter is that they're doing this whole like, well, we're just a neutral party, we're just a platform, right? We just connect a driver to a rider, or a driver to an end customer with some goods delivered, right? We're just providing the platform. It's like, okay, well then you're responsible then for the person who comes on it from the consumer side to some extent. You've got to be.
Yeah.
So as someone who doesn't do rideshare, I just do delivery. Most of my safety hazards are like, someone's dog
Yeah.
attacking me in the front yard, or, not shoveling their walkway when it's icy and whatnot. But yeah, no, that one I think it's a harder one to tap into, because we're talking about them now restricting their customer base, and they always want to sell.
Yep. The customer is the golden goose that lays the golden egg. We don't want to touch the customer because, I'll tell you one thing from my ride share experiences for 7 years. I don't know how many times I've gotten a fake name showing up at 2 a.m. in an alley named Killer. I'm like, for
Oh,
a ride share driver, right? I mean, does that make sense, right? At least, how about this? How about just purge all these names that are fake names? Because we know it, we get it all the time, right? But these companies are just kind of going away from that. And also, a lot of the legislatures, like, look, they don't have the experience you have. You actually have done the work, right? And I bet you half the legislatures don't even know what active time is versus online time is, right? So to me, you doing this is just, amazing to me. It really, really is, because you exactly know what the drivers want and you're going after it. For about 5 minutes, if I could take 5 more minutes of your time, as you know, there is many different proposals or legislation coming down the pipe, in Illinois, in Nevada, obviously in Minnesota, in Colorado, obviously. And we know what happens with the TLC in New York. And, we have the Washington state model that's been in the process for about a year and a half now. And nobody's complaining in Washington. I mean, looks like they created a win-win-win situation for everybody. The customers did not quit using Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. The drivers are making the most amount of money I've ever heard of in the last 7 years, right? Because of super high rates, mile and minute rates. And, everybody seems to be, they're happy. I mean, so have you looked into that model? I mean, do you know anything about it?
oh, about Washington's model?
Yeah, yeah.
Not as intently. So I'm still kind of like since we've gotten the bill at least to a point where it's ready to head to the Senate. I started like looking at more like, okay, what are some other states? What are they doing? And I think we're actually closest to Minnesota's model.
Yeah.
I think I mean, I think a lot of the same basic ingredients are there, right? Like we're holding them to their promises. Keeping the driver in charge. Is there something in particular in Washington's model that you think we should be doing and that I'm missing?
No, I mean, on the deactivation side, you're doing pretty much what they did, right? They actually charge a customer 10 cents per ride more, and that goes into a fund, right? And that pays for the driver rights. Obviously, when they go in front of an arbitrator with a lawyer, it pays for that. The only thing different in Washington is that their mile and minute rates, which we used to get paid up until upfront fare showed up, is the highest in the country by a mile, and it goes back to actually the 2015 levels, right? So everybody is making really, really good money, and they're not turning down trips, because at that level, I wouldn't turn down any trips either. They get paid $1.50 a mile and 65 cents a minute. Just the time component is $40 an hour. And
Yeah.
nobody's complaining.
Closer to how it used to be when it was just taxi cab companies, right? Because that's rideshare has replaced. And I don't think anybody ever thought like, oh, we can't like pay them by the mile or by the minute or something like that, because then how will I'll never be able to afford it, or how can that didn't happen then. So no, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
it's working.
for that further down the road, it's not what we're doing with our bill. Because the transparency piece was the biggest thing that everybody asked for, and I think this is one of those things about taking political action. I think especially when you're up against anything like with a lot of money and a lot of connections and a lot of power already, is you need to come up with a strategy and an angle that like a lot of people actually have some buy-in for, because we don't want to like fight a fight that people aren't actually interested in.
Yes.
So this is kind of what we settled on. And I think, at the end of the day, and, you're talking about, Washington's success. I just think it's always so telling, because these are the same empty threats that we get every time we want to like raise the minimum wage, protect renters, get our teachers paid properly, whatever it is, right? Yeah. It's, oh, well, money just isn't there, or you're upsetting the market too much. The market will work it out. It always does, even though it doesn't. But like, workers are where all of the money comes from. Yeah. Working people generate all of the wealth. We're the reason there's value in our economy. We're the reason that wealth exists for people to do investments with. So why would we not be the first and primary beneficiaries of our own labor?
I think these companies have ignored it, and they continue to ignore one fact. If there are no drivers, there is no gig economy. I don't care how many times you can push that button, right? You push a button, your food shows up. You push a button, the car shows up. Well, somebody is doing that work. Would with their own expenses with their own cars. So no drivers, no gig economy. So I don't care what these companies honestly say, right?
Sure.
But at some point, fairness has to come into play, and it seems like what you're doing is beyond fair for these companies and for the driver community as well. So in the remaining couple of minutes in closing, look, I said this in the green room to you. I'm going to put everything I have behind any and all legislation that I think is for driver rights and driver advocacy, because I am a driver's advocate first and foremost. So how can we support you? What can we do to get our look, we have the largest channel in the country when it comes to the gig economy, and we have viewers that are willing to learn and understand and support you, and I'm sure we have a ton of viewers in Colorado. How can they get in touch with you? What can they do? And tell us a little bit about that in a couple of minutes.
For sure. Yeah. Well, so there is like the nationwide drivers' rights movement, which no doubt, about because, Steve and David did that episode with me. That's a really good thing to like log on to, sign up for their alerts. Anytime there's something going on that you can get involved with, they're slowly but surely like building up like a really solid communications plan that gets to everybody. So that's a good thing to sign up for. I think it's like driverrights.org, but search drivers' rights movement, you'll find it. If you're in the state of Colorado, contact your senator. Start with your senator. You also have a state representative, of course. I might even be it. I don't know if you're in Central Colorado Springs. I might be your gal. But we got to get it through the Senate first, and we want to make sure we get every single senator we possibly can. We have strong Democratic majorities in both chambers, but better safe than sorry. Contact your senator. Let them know that you are a gig driver. You support this bill. You're happy to like answer their questions about the gig economy because a lot of people don't understand it and we're the ones who know best, and that you're really counting on their vote for this essential legislation to protect their rights. And then we will rinse and repeat when it comes over to the House. If you would like, Sergio, I can also send you a link that you can add to your show notes. So people can sign up to pledge to testify when it comes over to House, because we will have in-person and remote testimony for committee that's really valuable.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, send me the link. I will put it in the show notes when this is running. Yeah, I mean, anybody in Colorado, if you guys don't like this, then maybe you shouldn't be in the gig world, okay? Because, Stephanie is protecting your rights or trying to get you more rights, more transparency, put a halt to unjust deactivations, at least on that part of the story. And, Stephanie, I truly appreciate your time. I know you're super busy as a freshman. I know you're bombarded with, all these requests, but thank you for making the time for us. And when the, video comes out, I'll definitely send you a link and we'll push that on our channels, on our end, obviously. And then we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I really love that you're doing this work. It's important.
Thank you much. I appreciate it.